In this video, we're going to talk about the best real estate marketing strategy right now if you're interested in getting more listing or buyer clients to your business in the current marketplace. Before we dive right into the context of this video, obviously I'm going to showcase you what most people are doing right now, what things are working, what things are not working, but just so you know the context of this information and why it's powerful, why it's beneficial to you, is that I work personally with over 300 real estate agents, one-on-one personally, but additionally we have interviewed thousands of real estate agents in our business during the last half a decade. So we have very good information about, okay, what most people are doing, the biggest challenges in that, what middle-sized businesses are doing, but also additionally what large, bigger brokerages are doing. So we have worked with top 1% producing teams nationally in the United States and also run their PPC advertising online as well. So having said that, let's dive right into this video. So let's first talk about what strategy you're probably doing right now. If you're an average real estate agent who makes about $50,000 a year, statistically, you're running this model right here, and it is based on sphere of influence. With sphere of influence, you usually have repeat clients, you have referrals, you have word of mouth, and with that sphere of influence, you're usually doing things like calls, texts, mailers, maybe a couple postcards here and there. The biggest challenge with the sphere of influence strategy is really the predictability and consistency of it. So whenever I talk to a real estate agent who's only relying on sphere of influence, it's always that they haven't had a deal, in 2 months, 3 months, and they're kind of like struggling to get their next deal. So that's the biggest challenge. The good aspect of it is obviously the fact that it doesn't cost a lot of money. You don't really have expenses towards your leads. You don't really have expenses towards your marketing, except like tiny expenses here and there. So it's certainly profitable, but most people tend to kind of get stuck in a certain level of income, whether that be $50,000 per year or slightly more. And if you do run this model for about 20 years, 30 years successfully, and you live in the same place for 20 or 30 years, obviously this can then get you to higher levels, but then ultimately we're still going to probably stagnate around, $200,000-$300,000 level, unless obviously you have exceptionality of it, aspect to it, you're a sports star or you're somehow other way famous when you start running that model. So at a certain point, you're going to start realizing that, okay, I need to get more clients, I want to make more income, I want to have more predictability in my business, and you start looking at marketing, really how to get people outside of your sphere of influence to recognize you and work with you. And the very first thing most people attempt is obviously cold calling FISBOs or expired leads. And really you go on Zillow or you just buy leads from really any lead provider out there, and now you put them to your CRM and then you start doing calls here and there. With this model, I would say the biggest challenge right now is obviously the fact that you have to do it. So for cold calling specifically, there's a certain personality type, I call that the producer type, who really excels in cold calling, where you kind of enjoy running 100, 200, 300 calls a day, and you enjoy talking to a lot of strangers, and you don't mind people being kind of, maybe a little bit rude to you in certain situations, right? But at the end of the day, with this model, the biggest challenge is the fact that it is not for everybody. There are people that say that every single person can become a great cold caller, but that is just not the fact. And with the recent changes in the marketplace, things like internal sales agents, things like virtual assistants, the cold calling aspect of the business has really gone global. And at the end of the day, we're going to have artificial intelligence, things like that coming up in the game, where cold calling is not going to be very, very viable strategy. Having said that, right now we have a team running calls as well to our leads, things like that. I would say the biggest challenge right now today is not even the actual cold calls, but it's just getting people to pick up. I'm sure if you have ever done cold calling and you have run 100 dials a day, 200 dials a day, for a fact you're probably going to have around 10 people or less even answer the phone in the first place. So it can be extremely tough just to get through. And also when you go on the actual listing appointments, obviously, your positioning is going to be very, very different from the deals you would get here in your sphere of influence, because at the end of the day, we are calling somebody who doesn't want to hire a real estate agent, and you have to convince them that they need to hire a real estate agent. So obviously at that point, you may have to reduce your commissions, things like that. Can be challenging for sure as well. So again, this model is good, but the biggest challenge is just the fact that not everybody is meant to be a cold caller, but additionally the fact that it's, again, the scalability aspect of it. If you don't really have 4 hours a day to cold call, 3 hours a day to cold call, and then on top of that do all of your other business activities, right, it can be definitely a lot tougher. So it's definitely a good model. The costs are definitely lower than in a lot of other models, but again, there's a time aspect of it. You still have to pay for it in some other way, and also obviously the stress aspect of it. If you're just not somebody who likes cold calling or excels at it, it's again can be very, very tough. So that's that aspect of it. And then at the end of the day, a lot of people, once they attempt this, probably around maybe 50-70% of people or more, they start running advertising and a marketing budget also towards sort of like warmer lead generation. Now we're talking about things like Zillow, Realtor.com, bold leads. And this is where you kind of start seeing larger brokerages kind of coming up into the game, where people usually make a little bit more money. Now at that point, they start like running a little bit more toward Zillow spend. And there's a lot of smaller teams, big mid-sized teams that run $10,000 a month on Zillow, $15,000 a month on Zillow, and they are running successful businesses with that. Having said this, with that model, there has been certainly a level of saturation. So because a lot of people are doing that, the cost per lead is going tremendously up. And I've seen that a lot of people, they have to pay now $300 a lead, $400 a lead in some markets. And it's like if you spend even $2,000 a month on your leads and you only get 5 leads and those are buyer leads, it can definitely be very, very tough. Also, obviously taking into account the long-term aspect of Zillow, which is to replace real estate agents. Obviously, that's not going to be good for your business in the long term as well, supporting these types of companies. So ultimately with those campaigns, the main thing is just that you pay for a service provider. You pay for Zillow, Realtor.com, bold leads. You put those leads to your CRM, or maybe you get a direct contact from the lead, right? They just live transfer the lead to you. And then you do some calls here and there as a follow-up mechanism. And then also you obviously have some sort of drip campaign. Most times you put them to a drip campaign, and then from there, they receive market updates or things like that. The biggest problem with this model is, again, the upfront cost with it. Right now, it's totally different than it was really 10 years ago or 15 years ago, when the cost per leads were a lot lower, competition were a lot lower. So it's like a lot easier to run this model. Whereas now the competition has gone up so much that in certain cases, it's not even profitable to run it, or it's only like a margin of, we're talking about 2x or something like that. So the profits are definitely not that much there, with a couple exceptions depending on the market that you're in. If you have a very niche market, sometimes that may work, but very rarely that is the case. So the biggest challenges is, again, those things, but also the fact that these are buyer clients. So if you're somebody who wants listings, again, because it's buyer leads, right, obviously at that point, that's probably not going to be the best fit for you. And then the profitability of it. Honestly, like at that point, if you're only getting 2 times ROI, and then you also have to pay for everything else. You have to pay a broker split, maybe you have to pay to drive there, maybe you have to do all the work there, right? And you're only getting like a tiny profit margin. It's not going to be that good of a model to run, even if you get some clients here and there. So at that point, a lot of people hear about social media. So now they run the lead generation model and they're like, okay, I need to do something different. So they think about social media, think about Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, YouTube, all of these different platforms. And where most people typically start off with is usually Facebook. And this is simply because Facebook, this is kind of easy to just put something out there. We're talking about just sold, just listed posts. A lot of time we're talking about automated posts. So there's tons of like services. You can put up KV Core, things like that. We'll just post on your Facebook page. And there are some people who have been in the business like 10 years ago, 15 years ago, back when Facebook had bigger organic reach. So now, again, they think that Facebook is still a good platform to do those types of things because of that. This is the model most 99% of the real estate agents are aware of. This is really based on sphere of influence, cold calling, door knocking, lead generation, and additionally automated / generic posts on social media. And this is what other real estate agents will tell you to do. Just so you know, if you ask a real estate agent, what should I do for my marketing? They will tell you, you need to run this model. Go and knock on more doors. Go and do more cold calling, while the best successful teams are doing something completely different. So let's dive right into the strategy we found to be working the best right now today, and how all of it kind of connects together. I want to mention that there's 3 different facets to this, and really if you can only make one of these work, you can really achieve 5 listing appointments a month, 10 listing appointments a month, or even more. But this is what we found, that if you have all of these, then obviously you'll be extremely successful real estate estate agent. So the very first thing to the strategy is the organic content strategy. This is kind of like a house. If you have a house, in the house you have foundation. So in your content, if you have a bad foundation, your content is not really good, it's automated, it's generic, then none of these things are going to work for you. I want to let you know that it doesn't matter what funnel you have. It doesn't matter what drip campaign you have. It doesn't matter what CRM you have. If you don't have good content right now today, it's extremely unlikely you're going to be very successful on social media. So these agents who are extremely successful right now today understand that, and they have mastered content creation. They have mastered how to get people's attention, how to produce something interesting, how to get people ultimately to take action and see them as the number one choice before even a phone call happens, before we have a listing appointment, before we do a transaction. None of that stuff even happens. They have already sold the prospect on working with them. And the way this happens is this is really dependent on your situation, your market, really your client avatar, things like that. But ultimately you could have channels like YouTube, TikTok, you could have channels like Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn. And with these channels, what you're ultimately doing is that you're building an audience of local homeowners. You're building a situation for yourself where you get people to see you as the number one choice. The difference is that, as we talked over here, while most people are trying to contact people one by one, they're trying to give a phone call, they're trying to do a text, they're trying to go to the door, they're trying to buy 5 leads a month from Zillow, right? Trying to do all of this stuff, and this is really just based on, trying to find those people who are wanting to do a transaction right now today. These people understand that they can actually build a situation from themselves beforehand, and if they do it beforehand, they can have a lot of scale to it. They're building an audience of thousands of local homeowners instead of just talking to one person at a time. And so what happens here is that if you have good content, you are going to get a lot more reach from these platforms, not even by boosting anything or anything like that. You're just going to have more people see your content in the first place, but also you have people seeing you as the number one choice. Because remember, if you're just posting, just listed, just sold, none of that stuff is really going to influence people to see you as their number one choice. Just a picture of a house, right? It's not going to create a situation where people want to work with you specifically. But with good content, you can create that situation for yourself. Again, it's kind of like being able to cold call 10,000 people at one time. If you're able to do that, that's what happens with the content. The difference is you don't have to do those cold calls, you just have people seeing a content piece you've created. Additionally, with this strategy, what they do as well is obviously still do what works. They still focus their sphere of influence. Their sphere of influence is on Facebook, it is on Instagram, it is on LinkedIn, it is on YouTube. So they're able to connect that. And again, because we're staying in touch with those people in the way that they want to stay in touch, right, through social media, the sphere of influence side of things is also going to work a lot better. Because let's face it, at the end of the day, none of us want to receive a cold call from a real estate agent every single week, right? None of us want to get text all the time asking who wants to buy or sell a house, right? Just the reality of things, none of us want that, but on social media, we want to consume content. Right now, you are consuming this video, but also virtually every single person out there, they have their Instagram open, they have their Facebook open, they have their YouTube open on a virtually daily basis, right? So if they do that, and they do that willingly, right, that tells us that the people want to be communicated that way. They want to consume the content. So ultimately, this will lead into more repeat clients, referrals, word of mouth, things like that. Obviously, still having said this, it's still good to stay in touch with people. I'm not downgrading that in any way. But with social media and the content and organic marketing, you can just really amplify things and get a lot more juice out of that. So that's what we've seen first. The content is completely different. It's like a day and night difference. Now, next step is going to be organic growth strategy. Now, this is extremely important because sometimes I have seen where people still stock at this kind of a range. They try to produce one content piece here and there. So you see people trying to create a reel, trying to create a TikTok, trying to create a post themselves, but there's really no ultimately underlying strategy behind that. And what happens is that they may create a post right here. It's actually a good post, but they post it like on Facebook one time, right? So the difference between top producers, difference between the best real estate agents out there is that they're able to distribute the content effectively. If they create a great video, right, they don't just post it on TikTok. They post it on YouTube, they post it on Facebook, they post it on Instagram, LinkedIn, all of these different platforms. And this is kind of what creates that sort of an omnipresence effect where you see a person on every single platform you go on. And this is what you probably see in an example with brands like Grant Cardone. No matter what social media platform you go on, any of these, you will see him on that platform. So again, all of that is going towards building that audience of local homeowners. And honestly, that just comes down to really learning social media, learning where to post, when to post it, how do you structure the actual post so a lot of people see that, right? And the people who haven't done the work, haven't put in, 10 hours, 20 hours to learning it, right? They're not going to be able to get those types of results without having, again, those different things set in place. So that's, again, where a lot of times I hear people say things like, well, I just want to have somebody do it for me, or I just want to have something that's going to do it for me, right? Trying to get a widget or something like that to do it for them. But at the end of the day, you need to be able to understand, okay, I create this content piece, I get this content piece, how do I get eyeballs on that content piece? And that's really all going to be based on, again, building that audience of local homeowners. So having said this is a great strategy, but you are going to run into limitations with your organic marketing strategy. So you also want to have a paid ad strategy. So like we talked over here, this sort of like older model with real estate is it's kind of like organic, right? We're talking about sphere influence, talking about cold calling. That's very, very much sort of like correlating to the social media aspect of things, the online marketing side of things, where right now the same things that work really well, 20 years ago, 30 years ago with cold calling and texting, right? Those same things are right now just organic social media, where we can still do those same things. It's just that we're doing them on a different platform. So from here, once you have this set up, obviously just what we talked with these strategies, it makes sense to have a marketing budget. Right now, it makes sense for us. Let's say we're getting 2 clients a month, 1 client a month from organic social media. We're generating about $10,000, $20,000 or more per month. From that, right, we want to amplify that. We want to scale it up. We want to get people coming into our business quickly. And that's where the paid marketing strategy comes in, because this works great. But I know for most real estate agents, organic social media, it does take some time, it does take some effort, and it's not like you're going to become extremely good at organic social media or build a large audience in like 1 month, right? It's going to take some time. So because of that, you want to offset that time delay with your paid ad strategy. With paid ad strategy, we're going to get things quickly, get things to happen. So with paid ad strategy, what we're going to do is now, instead of spending that money on things like Zillow, Realtor.com, Bold Leads, any of these other services that take a large lion's share of your profits, like we talked earlier, now all we need to do is just to build our own system into your business. So you're in control of the margins, you're the one that's generating the lead, and you're ultimately the one that, okay, well, let's say we show an ad, right? You are in the ad. So we're also building your personal brand while we're doing this. So the way this will work is that, number one, we want to avoid boosting posts, like all these types of things, right? They're ultimately just showing random posts here and there. But rather, you want to have an actual marketing strategy. And the way that I've seen that work, the way we found that to be working extremely well, is that you have 3 different layers to your marketing strategy. You have first your lead generation strategy, which is going to be either listing lead generation strategy or buyer lead generation strategy, depending on your situation. And then you're going to run that lead generation strategy. And again, going back to the content, the better your ad is going to be, the better your leads are going to be, the more leads you're going to get for the same amount of money that you spend. So I want to make that big distinction, because I've seen sometimes people just run lead generation ads, but they only run like 1 or 2 ads, right? And it's like random ads they got from, KV Core or online or something like that. And of course, then you're just going to pay a lot more for leads, or the lead quality is not going to be as good. So you need to make sure you have extremely good ads when you run that. But you first run that strategy, then you generate the lead. From here, as you get, let's say, listing leads, those leads need to be obviously set. They need to be got on a listing appointment. So the way that works, obviously, the first go to your CRM, but from here, you want to have an appointment setting call, appointment setting text messages, appointment setting social media messages, mailers, things like that. Still, those types of things work, and still we need to do those types of things to get people on a listing appointment. Now, there's a lot of nuances to that model as well, where I've seen people call leads like a day later or 2 days later, right? Well, we can't do that. We need to call leads quickly. We need to be able to get people people on a call in the first place. So people have usually have these things running extremely well. I would say that's one of the biggest things they have in place, is that they're able to convert the leads effectively into appointments. So at the end of the day, if you look at that model, right, we look at lead generation, we look at the call process, it's actually almost exactly the same as you would have here, with the difference that realtors who are doing really well right now, they're able to just get their own leads. They're able to get in front of people without having to spend 4 or 5 hours a day. They're able to do that just through social media, right? So we do that process, and from here, those leads that are doing business right now, you're able to effectively convert that into listing appointments. So just to give you a quick math, let's say you pay $20 per one listing lead, and then let's say you spend $1,000 a month on your leads, and now you have yourself a 50 listing leads. Well, now from those listing leads, statistically, from 1 to 3%, we're able to get a listing. Meaning, if you spend that much money, you spend $1,000 on your leads, usually you're going to have a listing, or maybe even 2 listings, depending on how many of those you're able to close on. Now, looking at the map there, a lot of you, if you're good at math or if you just know the basic numbers, right, you can kind of see that if you spend only $1,000 on your lead generation and you get yourself a listing, that's going to be around 10 times ROI you're already getting on the front end. And that's what makes it so powerful, is because the profit margins are a lot better and you have more kind of like bandwidth in that actual process. Now, the biggest thing I've seen additionally best real estate agent teams do as well is really going to be in their nurturing part as well. And this is probably what around 99.9% of people are just kind of completely ignoring, not looking at it at all. So kind of like how we talked about here with, say, Zillow leads, right? We're getting the leads, we're putting them into a CRM, and then we have a drip campaign that's running market updates every couple of weeks, right? A lot of people have that model. But as we talked earlier, most people, they're not going to be selling or buying houses right now, right? It's about 97% of people are probably not going to be buying or selling a house right now. So because of that reason, we have 97% of people who are going to be doing business later. We have those 3% of people who are probably going to be buying or selling right now. So we need to plug them into another marketing strategy that's going to actually nurture them, actually get them to see you as a number one realtor. And that's what we call the Omnipresence social ad campaign. So what happens here is that if you have ever bought something online, you got onto a web shop, let's say you were looking at an iPhone or you're looking at a new laptop, whatever you were looking at online, you have probably gotten retargeted online, probably got another ad, right? And there's a very particular reason why that happens, why the best businesses in the world do that. So what we found to be working really well and what we found to be extremely important is really, again, the pre-frame of those phone calls, the pre-frame of those text messages, the pre-frame of those social media messages. So just like we talked about the cold calling aspect of things, it can be extremely tough to set cold leads that have no idea who you are, what you do, any of those things right into an appointment. And we're talking about listing appointments, so we're talking about a situation where you go to a person's house and you actually meet them face to face, right? So that's where I see a lot of times people fail, is that, they run lead generation with Zillow, Realtor.com, any of these services. And again, the only thing they have for that homeowner, for that home buyer is, again, it's just a market update or phone call, right? It can be very tough for people to do business that way because they have no idea who the realtor is, what they are, how they do, just because there's just so many realtors in the first place, right? We're not talking about that it's a doctor or something like that. I'm talking about literally a person coming to their house, trying to offer their services. So because of that reason, what we found to be working really well is something that we call the Omnipresence social ad campaign. So when you get a listing lead, now instead of them only getting market updates or things like that, they start to see you online over and over again. They start to see you on Facebook, YouTube, all these other platforms that we kind of talked about before. And the main point is that when they see you, right, it's not just a generic post or something like that, but rather they see your face, they see you walk, they see you talk, and that's ultimately all going to be building more trust towards the situation for yourself. And so as you kind of run this social media ad campaign that's around the omnipresence aspect of things, not just trying to get a lead or something like that to these already generated leads, now when you actually call those people, again, you're going to have a lot more warmer connection, but also they're going to actually remember you. So honestly, if somebody opts in as a lead 6 months ago and you call them 6 months later, right, they're not going to really remember you that well, probably not going to remember you at all. But if you have this social media ad campaign working for you, they see you over and over again. Now you follow up with them, they've seen you 10, 30, 50 times, right? You're going to have a lot easier time trying to get them on actual listing appointment. So what this all does is that there's two main things working out for you when you run it this way. Number one is the profit margins in the lead generation. So when you have 5x, 10x profit margins in your lead generation side, it's going to allow you to, number one, have a lot more profitability. So you can actually have some money left over in your business after running the actual advertising, which is the whole point. But additionally, if you have this running really well and you get to an ad spend level of, say, $5,000, $10,000 a month, at this point, you can also hire yourself an appointment setter who's just going to do all the calls for you. And this is the stage we're in. We have appointment setting team. So ultimately, when we have calls in our businesses, it's not like we're doing all the calling and cold calling, things like that, or messages, right? We have a person specifically dedicated to that job whose full-time responsibility is just doing phone calls, reaching out to people, doing messages, doing social media messages, all these types of things. And that's what I was talking about earlier. If you are a person who's spending most of your time right here, right, you're spending 4 or 5 hours a day just cold calling, well, we're talking about a position that can be replaced with $1,000 a month pay. So you can pay somebody $1,000 a month, they're going to do all the cold calling for you. And so because of that, it's really not a very high leverage activity to do. Obviously, some people are better at cold calling than others, but at the end of the day, it's not that difficult to train somebody to say a couple lines here and there. So what's going on here is that we first have the profitability on the front end, we have the profit margins, and because of that, we have extremely good appointment setting. Additionally, we have the lead volume, right? Because with Zillow, again, if you only have $2,000 a month, you're not going to get that many leads, but with this model, you're going to get a lot more leads. But additionally, what happens here as well is that you have the Omnipresence ad campaign. So again, when those leads come in, and again, most of them are not doing business right now today, you're able to convert them on the back end, which again ultimately is going to increase your profit margins over the long term as well, not just a couple months later. So that's going to be extremely important for you to, number one, convert more of your leads, but number two, to build that audience of local homeowners. Because again, if you're marketing for lead generation and we have thousands of people see you, they go to your funnels, they see your ads, so on and so forth. Well, we have some clients who have had 2 million impressions in the last year in their market. When you have 2 million impressions through social media in your market, and let's say you have 100,000 homeowners in your market, at some point, those homeowners will start to remember you and really start to, again, kind of go into your sphere of influence side of things where they start referring business to you, they start doing word of mouth, they start really become those repeat clients as well. So really that's what happens here as well. And again, the process is the same. So with the Omnipresence ad campaign, all you have to do is that you're putting out 10 posts a month, 20 posts a month, right? And you're doing those as a retargeting ad, but then from there you can have strategically placed posts where you just direct them to book an appointment to your calendar, and obviously proactively still doing follow-up and things like that, either yourself or to your team, depending on the size of your business. And all of this kind of directs us to the last step, which is listing appointments, and then obviously listing agreements. And then if you're running just a buyer funnel, just replace the word listing appointment with a buyer appointment. So those are pretty much the biggest differences I've seen right now today as far as what is the best real estate marketing strategies. So I typically like to measure things in numbers. This is something that has seen a lot higher profitability numbers compared, again, to the old model, but also, again, compared to time, right? If you're spending a lot of your time cold calling or door knocking or, chasing after 5 leads or 10 leads a month that you're getting from Zillow, obviously you can spend your time a lot more wisely if you just have a lot more new inflow from your listing lead generation ads on social media, and also from your organic content, just have people come into you. It's from a place where they kind of already know who you are, what you do, what's your story, and all of those different things. So I feel like this has like two sides to it, where it's more profitable just because not everybody knows or kind of is able to do this profitably, right? So you have less competition. But number two as well, with the content side of things too, a lot of people kind of don't want to learn that skill or don't tend to think that they can create content, whatever. They have those sort of objections in their mind. So those people that kind of do create the content tend to get a lot more reach and also results from their campaigns as well. And that's the beauty right now today. I don't think this is going to be the case 10 years later or 20 years later, but right now today, very few people are willing and able to do these types of things and really willing and able to just kind of run these things in general. So if you are somebody who can do these things and is willing to do these things, and you're looking for a process for yourself, what I recommend you to do is you can click the link below and schedule a free 45-minute strategy session where I can actually walk you through, okay, what you're doing right now, right, what we can do better, but most importantly, just showcase you how could you implement this exact strategy directly to your business, directly to your market, and how that's actually built out in around 7 weeks. So you just click the link below, book in a free appointment. It's 100% free. Again, there's no pressure to buy or do anything like that. But if you click on that, we'll be able to hop on a Zoom call with you, and I'm happy to share with you a bit more around how this would customize and work exactly for you for this next kind of like period of marketing, period of really client generation in the real estate industry. So if you're somebody who's, again, open to learning, open to working, open to getting a lot of deals coming in and kind of building something more innovative, just click the link below, book that in, and I'll see you on that side.